Hello and welcome. Our top focus today is on Libya. A senior employee of Libya's Central Bank, who was abducted on Sunday, has now been released. The bank has announced it is resuming all its operations, which were halted following the kidnapping. The bank earlier said its information technology head, Musab Msallem, was kidnapped by an unidentified group from his house. The central bank blamed unlawful parties that threatened the safety of its employees. It added that other bank officials had also been threatened in the past. Now the bank has announced the safe return of the employee, but details of kidnappers are not yet clear. Sunday's abduction came a week after the central bank's headquarters in Tripoli was attacked by armed men. As per the local media, the siege was an attempt to oust the bank's governor, Sadiq al-Kabir, who has faced criticism over the management of Libya's oil resources and the state budget. However, the central bank siege received national and international condemnation. The United States denounced the attack and the attempt to oust the bank chief. Meanwhile, the United Nations highlighted that it has played an important role in the country's financial stability. Now, Libya has struggled to establish and maintain a stable government since NATO intervention overthrew dictator Moammar Gadhafi in 2011. Since 2014, the North African nation has been governed by two governments, with opposing factions located in the east and west of the country. A UN-backed administration known as the Government of National Unity is based in Tripoli in the west. It is headed by interim Prime Minister Abdulhamid al-Beba, who was installed through a UN-backed process in 2021. While the rival faction, known as the House of Representatives, is based in the east. It is headed by warlord Khalifa Haftar. Despite a 2020 truce and efforts to formally reunify institutions, a political solution has remained elusive. Now, clashes continue to break out between the two rival factions. On the 9th of August, at least 9 people were killed and 16 wounded after clashes erupted between two armed factions in an eastern suburb of Tripoli. Now, the abduction of central bank's senior employee raised fears of further escalation in tensions. The central bank is independent but owned by the Libyan state. It is the only internationally recognized depository for Libyan oil revenues that are vital economic income for the North African country. To discuss the developments further, we have with us Tim Eaton, a senior research fellow at Chatham House. Tim joins us live from London. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what impact does the kidnapping and the subsequent suspension of the central bank operations have on Libya's economy and financial stability?
Well, I think these events are evidence of a growing dispute between the recognized Government of National Unity based in Tripoli and the Central Bank of Libya. It's tempting to think of the central bank as a purely technocratic institution that's separate from politics. But for the last decade, the central bank has been very much at the center of political disputes, of course, because of its ability to disperse funds of the nation. So this is a sign of escalation. The fact that the central bank has had a senior member of staff kidnapped, this isn't the first time. This happened a number of years ago and shows that there are heightening tensions between the leader of the central bank, Sadiq al-Kabir, who has been in place actually since 2011, and the incumbent government. So this is likely to lead to a series of ongoing disputes and spats, which will certainly do the economy no favors and will not further efforts to achieve a nationally unified budget or address problems in the economy.
And how does this kidnapping relate to these ongoing power struggles and the divisions, as you've mentioned there, between Libya's political landscape, especially in terms of safety and security, and the governments, these rival governments?
Yes, well, at the heart of this is that there are, in fact, two contending governments, and behind those governments, two contending major networks of power that seek to control the Libyan state. And as a result, there is no unified budget, there is no budget law, there is a broken relationship between the government in Tripoli and the parliament based in the east of the country. And that's really made the central bank ground zero, in effect, for efforts of those players to mobilize the funds of the state. And given that 97% of the Libyan state's funds come from oil and gas, and that the majority of those funds, at least until recently, have come through the central bank, that means that forging alliances with the central bank are very important for these political figures. And for the central bank itself, having to operate in such circumstances means that it has to also seek assurances and do deals with rival players in order to prevent a more significant outbreak of conflict, but also to ensure that the central bank remains unified itself. So this fits a broader pattern, and indeed we've seen these types of developments spread to the National Oil Corporation as well. So in effect, as these very powerful groups of kleptocrats seek to capture the Libyan state, the central bank has become very much ground zero for those efforts. And so this is a continuation of that trend.
Mm. Yeah. And then what measures can the central bank take to prevent similar incidents in the future and to safeguard its employees?
Well, the central bank finds itself in a very difficult situation. Ultimately, this isn't going to be resolved by a series of technical decisions. The central bank has to acknowledge that the basis of this dispute is political. It has to deal with a rising number of, or rising power of armed groups and a wide array of factions. So really what I think is actually needed here is a degree of mediation between the central bank, other economic and financial institutions of the state, and those rival networks more widely, to try and set some ground rules as to how the Libyan state institutions should manage in the current situation while there is no accepted government. I think until that agreement is in place, these types of disturbances and problems will continue to mount.
Right. And Tim, just finally, in your view, is there a connection between this kidnapping and the recent siege of the central bank by armed men?
I think it's very difficult to look past that connection. Ultimately, these events come in the wake of a growingly difficult relationship between the Central Bank of Libya and the Government of National Unity. The Central Bank of Libya has sought to prevent the Government of National Unity from spending more money. The central bank has contended that it needs to protect the currency and that overspending has become a major problem, while the Government of National Unity has sought to spend more and more money to shore its position. This has set the scene for the two to become at loggerheads, and it's become very, very personal. So I think that you have to see this unresolved dispute as a real problem in the west of Libya, and also, of course, with connotations for the whole of Libyan economy.
Yeah. Absolutely. Tim, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa and for your insights and analysis on all the news coming out of Libya.
Thank you.
Across continents, one powerful news source.
Bringing you diverse perspectives on the issues that matter.
We go beyond the boundaries to give you that little extra about every sporting moment. So thank you for making Firstpost 5 million strong. We're counting on your support, and you can trust us to bring you the news unfiltered and unvarnished.
Climate change is on our doorstep. It's time for a revolution to take root. And it starts with 1.4 billion Indians. It starts with one tree for humanity, one tree for Mother Earth, one tree for a future. Project One Tree, a News 18 network initiative.